Hey, listeners, welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. We have talked about what we consider the bad one, so we thought we'd revisit the 1999, I'll call the fun version of this series, and go back and watch The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. And, Rob, we had talked about doing these for a while, actually, and I think we've said multiple times, like, man, we're surprised we've never done this series. And going back and rewatching this today, now I've watched this movie a lot. Like, this is one of those movies that I will really oddly just periodically turn on just because I see it when it's on a streaming platform. um but man, I'll tell you what, this movie, and I'll wait to get into complete details, but this movie is, to me, a shining example of what can happen when you have really, really likable characters and a cast that seems like they're having a good time and has chemistry, because this movie is not perfect by any means. Um, there are some things wrong with it, but man, I was thinking to myself, looking at this from like a critical standpoint to talk about it, that in a weaker movie with a weaker cast doing this, there would be things that I would not like about this movie, and that's exactly what we talked about with the 2017 version of The Mummy with Tom Cruise. But man, this movie overcomes some, what I would say are some pretty significant flaws in certain aspects, but this cast, just, you cannot help but be in love with them.
100%. This is funny you mentioned, like, we've talked about this series on again, off again, almost as long as I've been coming on the air to talk about movies. Like, at some point this has come up that we've wanted to do this, and for whatever reason it hasn't been until right now that we've decided to go ahead and do it. And honestly, if you look back at the last few months of some of the absolute turd piles that we've been
Right.
watching, I kind of feel like we owe it to ourselves just to watch something that was just a total blast. It was a lot of fun. I mean, when have you ever watched this movie and regretted the decision? Like, never. It never. Like, who out there has ever been like, I think I'm going to put on The Mummy, turned it off, and was like, I think that was a bad idea. I should have watched something else. Like, nobody has ever done that. And you mentioned the cast. 100%, the way that they interact with one another, even characters that just meet, it's really they just work together. They absolutely work together in ways that it takes a lot of pieces, right? So if you have to have a good story, you have to have a good vision, you have to have good storytelling, and you have to have the cast that can sell it. And this movie has a lot of kind of weird things. It's got some genre tropes of that action adventure period piece, but it's like you kind of look past some of the things that don't work because you're having so much fun. There's enough seriousness and there's enough to create stakes. A lot of it is done sort of off camera with shadows, like the murders and things like that. You really don't see a lot of like true gore per se. So it's not like you have to have like the distraction of the gross out of gore from a traditional horror film. So you've got enough of that to make the stakes seem real, and you've got enough humor to keep it lighthearted, because this is ultimately a lighthearted movie, but there's not so much that it feels silly. It never crosses over into silliness. Even the score really helps keep the tone of all of the major action set pieces where it needs to be. There's stakes, but you never take it too seriously. And just the way that this group of actors plays off one another, and just, you said they seem like they are having fun making this movie, and I have fun every time I've watched this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. It's crazy how I will, like, come back to this movie time and time again, but, it also makes me sit there and you sit there and go, "Man," it certainly, he's had, a resurgence, and people will say, what they will about, Batwoman getting canceled, um, but man, I'll tell you what, you almost forget how charming and lovable Brendan Fraser was
Oh
back
my
during,
god, I
like,
know.
back during this time frame. Um,
I kept thinking that as I was rewatching this, is like, why did he ever go away from like just being in movies all the time? Like, who have you ever heard is like, you know what? I could take or leave Brendan Fraser. Like, I'm not into him. I think he sucks. Like, nobody's ever said that. Why did this guy go away? Why did we not have 10 of these movies instead of 10 Fast and Furious movies? Like, I know the third one, eventually we'll talk about it, isn't great, but if you look at how much is there and how much works for this, it almost seems inconceivable that we only got 3 of these and that there was a period of time where Brendan Fraser wasn't in a blockbuster movie every year.
yeah, I mean, certainly I've heard some reasons why he was out of Hollywood. Some of them are actually, you know,
Kind of messed up.
kind of messed up. And I think certainly too there was the hope that after the Mummy Returns and the Scorpion King, that's before Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, became this huge movie star. 1999 when the Mummy Returns came out and everything like that. That's when everybody was thinking The Rock was going to be a huge movie star, and he was doing things like the Game Plan and not that I don't mind any of his, not that I don't like any of his early movies, but I think after The Mummy Returns and then The Scorpion King, I think the reason we never saw more of these, one, the third one didn't do very well, but two, I think they really were looking to hand this franchise over, unfortunately, because they thought, you know, oh, well, The Rock's going to be this huge movie star right now, and we'll do things with the Scorpion King, which didn't really pan out. But I don't know if that's true, but I think to me, I feel like that was their intention, kind of like they did with Blade Trinity. They really made that movie to try and spin that off.
And not only that, I mean, they tried to spin off the character of the Scorpion King overall. So he had his standalone film, which it's interesting if you look at that. I mean, that was I believe The Rock's first like leading role where he was the lead character, if I'm not mistaken, unless you're thinking of something I'm not.
Was that before Walking Tall?
I think it had to have been. And what's amazing is if you rewatch that movie, and I haven't seen it in a while, but he's got more fight scenes than he does lines. And that's intentional because at that stage of his career, he could not act like camera acting. Say what you will about his wrestling acting, but for camera, he was bad. And he's
Right.
certainly come a long way. But after that, they did so before streaming for listeners who were like younger millennials or Gen Z that never really had like a blockbuster or something like that, or the equivalent in your town of your local video store. There was such a thing as a straight to video, and that before streaming, and honestly, like streaming movies. Don't really have the negative connotation that sometimes they once did. I mean, Netflix's internal studio has cranked out some pretty good things. I mean, we've talked about a few of them here and there. Hulu has got some great exclusives. There's been some pretty good stuff. But back in the day, if you created a straight to video movie, it meant that it wasn't good enough for a theatrical release. Nobody was going to pay for a ticket for it, so you would just release it straight to video. And they did a sequel to The Scorpion King that went even further back, and it had Randy Couture in it as one of the
Hmm.
primary villains. Matt, did you ever see it? It's terrible.
So yeah, I actually did watch because it was during one of my like kicks of just watching bad movies where I was just going through like for whatever reason I was just going on the weekend and going through consistently bad movies. They've actually made I think I saw the
Like 3 or 4, I think.
uh let's see, The Scorpion King, The Scorpion King 2, The Scorpion King Battle for Redemption, and The Scorpion King Quest for Power. So they've made 4 of these.
Which is
Um
3 more than they should have.
yeah, and I saw the second one, and I believe I saw part of the third one, which has Billy Zane and Ron Perlman in it, and
Oh, wow.
Dave Batista, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Um, oh, and Kimbo Slice. Um,
I didn't even know that. But Randy
Uh,
Couture literally relinquished the UFC heavyweight title while
yes.
he was on the set filming the second Scorpion King movie because it was contractual things, and that's another show for another day. But he thought he was going to be a big movie star, and the Scorpion King 2 was the movie he was working on when he thought that was going to be a thing for him. Well, how did that turn out?
Yeah, no, yeah, they made 4 of these. I might have to just go watch the other ones, but yeah, no, the
You
Scorpion
might
King
be on your own on
I know,
that.
right? Yeah, no, that'll be one of those I just watch for the sake of watching it. Um, but yeah, that my god, man. That was man, I tell you, the Scorpion King 2 was just so bad. And not that the first one was great. Oh, they made another one called Scorpion King Book of Souls that's part of the same universe.
Oh God.
Wow.
As demanded by who exactly?
Yeah. You are correct. As demanded by who?
Yeah.
Wow. Anywho, let's get back to the good one. But
Yeah. So
um,
that's literally in my notes. I have the mummy, comma, good one is how I have this
yeah,
labeled.
and it starts off with and here's what I'll say. It starts off with a 4K, and sometimes this has been the case. Certainly for me, this was the case with Independence Day when we went back and watched it. But some of these movies that have 4K transfers, um, doesn't do the old effects a lot of favors, and some of the CGI in this movie is pretty bad. Um, Now, Imhotep, I think, is done very, very well, but there are certain things like that opening scene, um, where they're talking about Imhotep and Moon, and they're showing all of the pyramids. To me, it's not that great looking. There's certainly some green screen there that you can very, very clearly see, but again, it's it's overweighed by the fact that you're just having fun in this movie. And even for 1999, like the mummy effects in this movie are really well done, especially after Imhotep is resurrected, where he's transforming from just bones to like getting flesh and everything in between. For the most part, I was impressed with how well this actually held up.
We've watched movies that have come out in the last 2 or 3 years with worse CG
Oh
than what
yeah.
we saw here from 1999.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And that's really saying something. I made a note towards the beginning of the movie, when we really first meet Rick O'Connell when he's I think he's in the French Foreign Legion or whatever that is he's in. And we have it's just so nice to see an army of real people on horses instead of a cheap CG one. And I
Mhm.
might just be an old man yelling at a cloud here, but it just always feels more real to me when it is real.
Right.
And there's so often in this movie, again, released in 1999, before visual effects were, and I'm using air quotes here, as good as they are now, and it got to be less expensive, really, is what it comes down to, than paying a stunt guy to actually get lit on fire. You think about that boat scene a little bit further into the movie where the fire starts, and there's multiple fire burns in this movie that are real fire burns. That's a real stunt man with a real crew around that burn. And today that would just be all CG and it would look terrible. But that was a real fire burn and it was so effective, and just the impact of seeing real people on real camels and real horses at the beginning of this instead of digital extras. Um God, it made me nostalgic. Like that's how things used to be. Like why can't we go back to that? This was better.
Yeah, it was better, and it's again, it just like it gets cheaper or whatever the case may be, but when it feels realistic, that's when you're in it. And again, as lighthearted as this movie is, there does feel like there's stakes, and that's something that this movie did so well at balancing, where the mummy that we just talked about, doesn't know how to it doesn't know how to balance it because it has weirdly like mistimed humor where the movie's supposed to be incredibly serious, where this movie, even though it's lighthearted, there's still some dark, some darker tones to it. When the diggers get the acid burn
Yeah.
from opening up the chest, that's pretty graphic. Certainly there's bodies that get their freaking very life sucked out of them, and there's detail in that. Um so there's dark moments in this movie, but it plays those different genres and it plays the humor very well. And again, it's because of the cast, because all of them work in this movie. I mean, it's not only Brendan Fraser, and he's great. He is fantastic in this movie, but Rachel Weisz, even Arnold Vosloo as Imhotep. I don't always particularly think of him as great. I don't think he's awesome, but John Hannon as Jonathan, he's he's fantastic in this movie. I like him. I like his relationship with Evie. I like how, you know, he is really, really like a coward. He's not a tough guy. He's not a fighter. But when they first get to the dig site and they all have their guns drawn on each other and they're like, "This is our site, friend." And they're like, "Well, we got here first." And, "Oh, well, we have more guns than you." And Rick O'Connell's like, "I've had worse odds." And Jonathan goes, "So have I." And just like the look that Rick shoots him, it's just like, it's funny. And he plays this very well. Again, that'll be a conversation for another time, but that's part of the reason why The Mummy 3 did not work for me, is because of the change in actress from when Rachel Weisz decided not to come back and be Evie. Um, Her chemistry with Brendan Fraser is off the charts in this movie.
It's fantastic. And the scenes with her and Jonathan together are really good too. You buy them as kind of this really unique brother sister relationship, that it's got its strains, as all familial relationships do, but there's real care there.
Hmm.
The There's just so much that works with this. You mentioned Arnold Vosloo that plays Imhotep. he he really impressed me with this. I kind of had forgotten how good I thought he was in this, but he speaks no words of English in this whole movie, and yet the way he's able to convey a level of evil charisma without, and really even the dialogue he does speak is very limited. It's mostly through facial expressions that he's able to execute what he does, and is a very, I would say, an iconic villain of this period of time. I really was like, wow, I kind of forgot how good he was in this. And overall, I was like, wow, I kind of forgot how good this movie was overall. Like, just why have I waited? It might be 10 years since the last time I've seen this movie, to
Oh,
be
wow.
honest. And it's like, why did I wait this long? And you can really see kind of the inspiration the Pirates of the Caribbean series took from this kind of movie, where they have some of those horror elements, some of those macabre elements, while still keeping it fairly lighthearted, and keeping the adventure and having the supernatural elements, but still making it feel grounded, like it's in the real world. I really got a lot of those kind of same vibes as when we watched Pirates of the Caribbean. What was it, 2 summers ago, 3 summers ago? How long ago was that now? We did that whole series.
I believe
And
too.
yeah, that was I was just really kind of feeling those sort of vibes, and that's usually a good place.
Yeah, no, this is actually a good movie. Now there's some cheesy dialogue, but again, the characters deliver it. I'm gonna say this one more time. This is a movie where the cast makes it believable. We have seen what some people would consider better actors and actresses do worse with dialogue, but for whatever reason, everybody in this, it's like a perfect storm. Everybody in this movie lined up. Whether it was I don't know if the directing had something to do with it, just how it was on set, if it was just loose. And again, like, everybody was having a good time, so they were into it. But some of the things in this movie would crush, you know, what we would consider a good movie or something we would say, yeah, this is where I was disappointed. This is where the movie really fell short for me. Now, in a joking manner, when breaking this thing down, I think we can both agree the Magi suck at their job.
100%. They are not good at what they do. And it's like, you had one job.
Right.
You had one job, and they show up and and this is the, like, probably my biggest beef with this is, yes, they suck at this really bad. They show up, they stop them from opening the thing, and they're like, all right, well, that's probably enough bloodshed. So we're just going to leave and let you guys do whatever you're going to do. And we're just going to make you pinky swear that you're actually not going to touch the cursed
Right.
thing that's going to kill everybody. Pinky swear? All right, cool. We're out of here. See ya. Deuces. And then they leave, and then all hell breaks loose. And then the one other complaint that I have, and it's Magi related, is that they go from literally shooting and killing each other and watching their blood brothers get taken down in a hail of bullets to being BFFs with the people that pulled the trigger to begin with. They do that move pretty quick. And I understand it's a move of convenience, but man, that sure happens pretty quick.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. I noticed that, but really, I don't care because this movie's just fun.
Right. Yeah. No, it doesn't matter at all
I
because
literally don't care.
what happens after is really fun. And then again, just like switching back, there's the scene where they do leave. Okay, like once Imhotep is resurrected and they leave the pyramid, like all of that is fun. And there's horror elements involved where his hand comes popping up out of the sand. That that is fantastic. I love that. The eclipse coming over,
Mm.
that is great. When they are cornered and they're trying to get away on the street, all of that really, really works well. And just, again, Brendan Fraser, charming, good-looking guy, great build, but he can pull off the role of like, okay, like he's a charmer, he's a ladies' man. But when Imhotep is going to take Evie and she's going to go with him to save everybody, and he just says, like, he's got the gun and he's like, I'll be seeing you. I'm like, yeah, you're a badass, dude. Like, and he's shown that earlier in the movie, but he plays this role so well, man. Like, I cannot say enough for Brendan Fraser in this movie.
In the cinematic history of damsels and scoundrels, the pinnacle is always and will always be Han and Leia, right? Like that is the standard by which you judge all other versions of that relationship and those types of characters in movies. But I'll tell you, Rick and Evie make their case to be on Mount Rushmore of the damsel and scoundrel kind of relationship that we see on screen. And I got a lot of those kind of vibes too. And I mean that in the most complimentary way. I don't mean that in a way that I think they ripped anything off, from the way that those characters were portrayed. This is their own interpretation of that kind of, roguish bad boy that sometimes plays by the rules, sometimes does his own thing. And the female character that gets overlooked and underestimated, but is a total badass and can take your head off too when required. Um, this is, again, I'm not going to compare it at the same level, but they're on the Mount Rushmore of top four of best versions of that relationship of all time.
I absolutely agree. I think this really is a really good couple. And regardless of what happens in The Mummy Returns with some of the retconning, which I'm sure we'll get into when we talk about that movie,
Yeah.
their chemistry and their bond and like how you feel about them as a couple, it grows in that movie. And again, that's just one of the reasons why I was so disappointed that it had to be recast in The Mummy 3 is watching their relationship grow from the first movie to the second movie and even just through the first movie. It again, their relationship does feel very like organic. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like that typical like come on, these two people would never actually fall in love or start to catch feelings for each other. it going through the movie again, I was very impressed with how organically things flowed.
Yeah, it's enough good things can't be said there, and yet you have those elements, and you get these great one-liners throughout the movie that it it dabbles in so many different genres, and trying to mix that many genres or that many elements together in one movie, I think in a lot of cases is trying to do too much, and we've seen that go off the rails. And yet this is like the near perfect mixture of everything. Like if you were making a recipe for a movie and you had all of these ingredients, it would be very easy to put in like way too much of this or way too much of that and
Right.
have it not work.
It was supposed to be a pinch and the top comes off the salt.
Yep,
Like
and it's just like, whoops, you've added way too much. And we don't have that here. It's just some of the one-liners that I absolutely love. Just the number of times that Rick says goodbye, Benny, and
Yep.
he just leaves it behind. Is it just every time that happens, it makes me laugh. And I'm thinking of another moment. So the scene on the boat where it's burning down, and there's the local guy. It was actually the jailer that agrees to get him out and goes up with
Mhm.
them. And he says, what are we doing? And Rick looks at him and says, wait here, I'll go get help, and then jumps over
Yeah.
the edge. Just
Yep.
like the humor is clever. The humor doesn't feel like things we've seen before. Um, just even the small moments like when Evie's saying, "Oh, we got to go back and get the map," and he's like, "Nope, got the map right here," and he's just pointing at his head. Just the way that Brendan Fraser commands that scene, like I distinctly always sort of remembered that line of that moment for whatever reason. It just always like stood out as like something I've iconic that I've remembered about this movie. Um, but yeah, there's so many like the score I mentioned it just really helps set the action adventure comedy feel. Yes, there's shooting and flames and fighting, but that whole scene on the boat just feels fun. And it's
Mhm.
like, wait, I just watched a man get lit on fire and another man with a curved hook try to destroy someone, and yet I'm laughing and having fun. This feels weird, but it works.
Well, because yeah, and I like right before all that though, like again, you talked about his delivery and stuff like that, but not even not even just his delivery, but again too, like Jonathan in those scenes when he's talking to the other team, he's like, "Who says we're looking for Hamanoptera?" He does, and he's just and Jonathan's like, "Well, all right, guys, like no need to point." He doesn't say that, but like his face is like, "No need to point." Like Jesus, um but you have like those scenes. You have the scene where he, like you just said, he tells him like, "Wait here," and he jumps over. Then when they're off the boat, and even him and Benny, like even though Benny's a
Yeah.
bad guy, I like their relationship too. And when he's like, "Looks like I've got all the horses," and he's like, "Looks like you're on the wrong side of the river." Like it,
That's a great scene.
it's just it's funny when they get to Hamanoptera. Hey O'Connell, nice camel. Like, just there's humor, then there's tension, then there's an action scene, and again, it just balances all of these elements so well. And then again, there is a sense of stakes when stake to this movie when Imhotep summons the cloud storm. That is super cool. That's a great effect. Like I remember the first time watching this movie when that face pops up in that giant freaking tower of sand. That was really cool. Like that was a
Yeah.
really good moment.
And by 1999 standards, we had never seen that before,
Right.
really. I mean, think about where the state of special effects was at that time, and it was nowhere near what we have now. Although, again, I still don't feel like we've come that far, considering how well this does hold up. Want to go backtrack just for a second. You mentioned how well Rick and Benny work together. I love that this movie makes that relationship very complex, and
Mhm.
it's not just straightforward that they're frenemies. You know what I mean? It's not just that Benny backstabs Rick. And there's never a moment where they're literally trying to just kill each other where it feels weird that they run into each other later and then like are goofing it up and laughing it up and not like trying to kill each other still. Like the relationship seems very complex, and you can't just nail it down in like one sentence is how you would describe the relationship. And I've always loved that about this movie, that they just added this goofy comedic relief character, but somehow made him somewhat complex. Like even when Imhotep sort of grabs him, it's like you kind of understand, like, dude's trying to save his own skin. Like, how
Right.
many other people would make that same decision? Like, he's not necessarily a bad guy, he's just an opportunist trying to keep himself alive.
Right.
I find Benny to be a really interesting, like I said, complex character, and the relationship with Rick to be interesting and complex.
Yes, it is, because I mean, he even does, like, Rick still tries to save him.
Yeah.
Like, he's not
And it
necess
feels right. It feels like he
right.
would do that.
He's not necessarily heartbroken, but
Yeah.
he does try to save him. Um, I do like too. I was talking about the scene where Rick tells Emotep like, "I'll be seeing you," but in that same scene, I can't remember the exact. I might be reversing these lines, but he's like, "You'll be Prince Emotep." It says you'll be his forever, and she's like, "For all eternity, you idiot!" Like, and just,
Yeah.
but again, like the look on Benny's face from the actor, he's just like, hmm, like,
So the other part where something like that sort of comes up, and I think it might be my favorite scene in this movie. Towards the end, you've got your big climax, you've got the big final battle, and they're trying to decode the gold book. And Jonathan's got it, and it's been established that he's got some knowledge, but he's nowhere near the level of expertise that his sister Evie has. And he's running around trying to decipher it, and he's describing in the middle of three different fights to his sister what the characters are and what the glyphs are, and she's trying to translate them while she's fighting for her own life. It is so funny and so well executed. You never feel like they're wearing plot armor. You never
right,
feel like any part of it stops being believable. And it's well shot, it's well edited, well paced, well acted, well executed. Just I think it's my favorite scene in this movie because it just works on so many levels. The amount of time that the camera focuses on each of those three main characters, um, it just works so well, and I laugh every time, particularly because of how cool like the special forces undead are,
mm,
and
yeah,
they seem different, like instead of just throwing us regular zombie mummies, like they gave us something a little bit different, a little bit scarier, a little bit more threatening. And I love that whole scene.
yeah. No, I totally agree. I That scene is probably one of my favorites, and again, it feels like a very good um it actually feels like a good climax to the movie. Sometimes those can fall short 'cause it's like, well, that ended rather quickly. It didn't feel, you know, like a good payoff. But I felt like, yeah, this ending battle here was actually really good.
And tonally it matched the rest of the movie.
Right, exactly. Right, that's exactly what it felt like. I just again, watching this movie, I was, and the funny thing is, this movie did not really it did not have a lot going for it when it was first announced. There was a lot of um worry because the movie was not tracking well, especially with the title. And they were talking to test audiences about it, and they thought it was going to be like this dark tone movie. So it was like, well, we're not going to go really see it, because again, 1999, different times. um but then this really did turn out to be a surprise hit. For 1999, this made a boatload of money, but it wasn't really a sure thing until they really had that first test screening that audiences were like, "Oh crap, like this is really fun." And then I mean, the only movie that beat this out when it came out is The Phantom Menace, which again, it's Star Wars. So,
Yeah.
if you could be the number 2 movie behind Star Wars for that period of time, you're doing something right.
Yeah, you came in second place to Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps, you're probably still pretty good.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't be mad with the silver.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so, it again, good score. I don't think the score gets enough credit actually
Mm.
because again, a score can drop a movie in my opinion, but what is played with this fits really well in the Egyptian theme. It flows together very, very smoothly, and that's another thing that enhances a lot of the scenes is that score.
Yeah, I think again when you're trying to go for action adventure comedy, the score really does help set that mood. It sets that tone, and without the right feel there, without something truly iconic, and you kind of need like hero and villain themes too. You need those moments where it's going to change, like when Imhotep, powers up a little bit. You'll notice there's changes in the score. It feels there's a lot more of that orchestral kind of hit, as he has things happen, and it really just tells you, the audience member, how you should feel in this moment about what you're seeing on screen. It's just like, you ever take the Benny Hill theme song Yakety Sax and you just play anything, any piece of video you want in fast forward and put that underneath, and it automatically makes it funny no matter what you're watching. Like, it's music, when used appropriately, can completely change something or ruin it.
Right, exactly. And I do want to point out too, with Emotep, and credit again to the actor, that when he is powering up, because it's not against our main characters, part of it's really cool. And I know he's literally draining people of their basically life force.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
he does pull a dude's eyes and his tongue out of his face.
right. But it's like it's just done it's done so well again because like the effects after he does like how he starts going from bones to somewhat flesh to mostly flesh and then he's just full-fledged, that character again. It's just done in a way where it looks so cool that you kind of forget the fact that like, oh yeah, he's just over here killing people left and right. Like
Yeah, and that's the other part too, is um he, while he is a villain and he does kill people, I think that he's kind of a compelling villain because you understand his motives. He had this love for Oxunaman, and they were forbidden from being together. I love the gold paint system overall. It's a very clever, like, security system, if you will. But, like, you know, the pharaoh comes in and notices the smudge. Like, couldn't she just be like, "Hey, man, I was just taking a nap and bumped into it. Like, it's no big deal. Like, nothing happened." Like, why does it
right.
automatically mean that she was stepping out on him or something like that? I mean, couldn't she just sort of like redo the paint? Like, there's no place they could have got some paint and just kind of touched it up and fixed it and just went on their way. Like, that was the thing. But it's creative. Like, and I love that about it. But no, they had this love for each other, and they were forbidden from being together. So, you know, perhaps you could even say that he was justified in taking his revenge on those that harmed him, because the way he was put to death was pretty awful. I mean, it was among the most awful ways you could do it. Um, not justifying his actions, but you kind of like, okay, you kind of see like this is a little bit more of a complex villain. He's not just trying to wipe everybody off the face of the planet just for fun. He's trying to reunite with his lost love and using anything at his disposal to do it. And not that different from how some people might also do that if they had those abilities and were put behind that kind of wall to be with those they love.
Well, not for nothing too. I mean, they turned him into this. Like they're the ones who fricking buried him and put this curse on him if he was ever
Yeah,
resurrected. Like
could have just could have just thrown him in jail and been done with it, but no, they had to
yeah.
curse him eternally.
Yeah, so I mean part of it's not even his fault, but no, I do love the paint system where he's like her arm is smudged. He's like, "Who has touched you?" And it's like, So does
Like,
she
she
get
never gets to just bump into a wall on accident.
right, but, like, does she get wiped down, like, every night? Or, like, when does that paint get done? Is it every morning? Because does she just have to stand straight? Like, does she have to fall asleep standing straight up? Like
Right.
like,
Like
she can't
every
yeah,
time the pharaoh leaves, like her chamber, like there's just like a whole bunch of like handmaidens that come in to
right,
reapply the paint. Like,
right.
how does that work?
Right. But yeah, no, I mean, that part was I always kinda thought that part, like, "Well, wait a minute, like, you could just" like, if she tripped and fell, that stuff would rub off.
Yeah, like she never just like, comes out of the outhouse or whatever they use and is like, "Hey, what's that's missing over there?" She's like, "I just came out of the bathroom. Leave me alone." Like
Right? Right, exactly. "You had your bodyguard in there with me, for God's sakes."
yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's a little creepy when you really start getting into it. Like how controlling of a douchebag was the pharaoh?
But,
I suppose he had
uh
reason to be suspicious though.
right, yeah, I mean, he did. Imhotep was, fooling around, but
Hire better bodyguards.
right, exactly. He just I love how the guys too, um oh man, I can't even, I'm not even gonna say that part, never mind, but yeah, I always thought that was kind of funny of that system, but, anything else that you are going to touch on?
No, let's grab some popcorn.
All right, so we will do popcorn time, and we're gonna rate this out of 5 buckets. And Rob, I'll let you go first on this one.
If you haven't figured it out already, this is easily a 5 out of 5 for me. I love this movie. I adore this movie. We've been talking about this movie for so long at various points about doing this. I was really excited that when it was time to do it. I've never once watched this movie and not had fun. Even the parts that I know very, very well, I look forward to them every time they come on. I definitely recommend this movie to people who haven't seen it. Like if I'm just casually having a conversation with somebody and this movie were to come up for any reason and they say they hadn't seen it, I would implore them, go check this out. It is 100% worth it. I was actually even talking about this movie this week with people at work. We were discussing just a couple of things, and I was just saying, "Oh yeah, I got to do this. I got this going on this weekend." And I was like, "Oh, and Matt and I are going to be talking about The Mummy," and I'm really excited about that. Like I was excited to tell people that I was going to be watching this to talk about it, and of the people that I shared that with, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's really good. I haven't seen it in a while," and now I'm like, "Yeah, I want to go home and watch that too." So easily 5 out of 5. Didn't even have to think about it a little bit.
No, either do I. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. It was great to go back and see it. I'm certainly looking forward to going back and seeing The Mummy Returns. But you know, this was a time when movies could when movies could be fun and there were different properties coming out, and it was good to go back to this time period. And then even so, and I'll talk about this more once we review The Mummy Returns, but just seeing some of the movies that came out um during these time periods and how fun they were, and you could have lighthearted kind of like big blockbuster movies. It was a good time period. It was a lot of fun. Not that we haven't gotten incredible movies, now. Um, but there's just something about going back and seeing this and kind of having a carefree movie that you could sit back, enjoy on multiple different levels. So this is again a 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, easily.
So that will do it for our review of The Mummy. Certainly much different thoughts than the Tom Cruise version.
Ah,
Much, much different. And we will be looking forward to re-watching The Mummy Returns and then giving you our thoughts on that. But Rob, before we sign off, let listeners know where they can get this review and interact with us.
Oh man, listeners, you can find Matt Goes to the Movies everywhere on the internet where you already are. Certainly, whatever streaming platform you are listening to this in, you can subscribe to the show. You can get the show on Spotify, uh, Apple Podcasts, literally everywhere that you can get good podcasts. You can find Matt Goes to the Movies. Just go ahead and hit the subscribe button and just make it easy. That way, as the show has new releases, and we're really excited to try to keep the release schedule up as we get through the end of the year. Plus, we definitely have our end of the year, second annual end of the year review coming up. So we're really, really looking forward into the year that was. And I'm personally really looking forward to it because there's so much that's even happened this year to even try to remember what was this year and last year. I'm really looking forward to that one where we kind of predict the future a little bit too. So we've got that coming. Make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss a single opportunity. In the meantime, go back and listen to any episodes that you haven't checked out. There's 3 years plus worth of catalog that you can dig through for some great times and good episodes. And make sure while you're on the interwebs that you like, follow, and subscribe in all of your favorite social media platforms. You can find Matt Goes to the Movies on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, all of them, all the good ones. Make sure that you like and subscribe so you can also get updates there and interact with the show. You can also send an email, mgttmpodcast@gmail.com, just the initials for Matt Goes to the Movies, podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you send us your thoughts, anything you have about this, or any requests for future reviews. Always love to hear from listeners.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's why I don't. But Rob, thank you so much. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you very soon at Matt Goes to the Movies.